What if I told you that nailing your niche didn't have to be a process or exercise that forced you to deny parts of yourself or the work that you want to build? What if instead, defining your niche could be a process in which you could fully be yourself and bring together the various parts of your work? In this video, I'm going to share with you a different way that I came to understand my own niche and how it completely transformed my work. Come with me. Hello, I'm Marlita, and this is The Creative Hill. As a choreographer, educator, and author, I am constantly in the process of creating, of going from a tiny sliver or fragment of an idea all the way to this fully formed organism in which I share with the world. And in that process of developing, there are these questions that I constantly have to answer, things I constantly have to work through in order to understand my work, to build structure and form around it, and to share it with the world. And on this channel, I want to share those questions I have to answer and those things that I have to tackle in this process of creating and sharing work, in hopes that it might encourage you, give you some things to think about in your own journey of building and sharing your work. Now, as I get into explaining this different way of understanding my niche, let me be the first to say that the conventional way that we understand it, the way we talk about it, teach it, practice it, explain it, it didn't work for me either. So I get it. I get why there is resistance and hesitancy to this idea of the niche. But I found this concept at a point in my journey, y'all, where I was really struggling. I was at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, and I had did all, or should I would say I was trying to do all of the things that they told you to do. And I was hitting roadblock, issue, struggle. And so when I found this concept of a niche, there was just something about it that would not let me go. So I could not outright reject it. And instead, I had to wrestle with it until I found a way to make it work for me. It didn't work for me for the same reason it doesn't work for you, or at least for the same reason why you feel some resistance or a little hesitation about excluding parts of your work or trying to reduce yourself to one thing. My work is an intersection of faith, art, and entrepreneurship. And in that intersection, I really struggled with this one thing concept. I struggled to reduce myself to one audience because I serve more than one audience. And it was hard for me to say the one thing that I did because I do more than one thing. Now, let me say that over the years, I have found a very spacious way to live within this one thing concept, but I'll talk about that later. So right now, I want to share a video that I made about my journey finding this new way or different way to define my niche. So I'm going to show you that video and then I'll see you on the other side. I developed this for myself some time ago because I wanted the benefits of nailing my niche, which is having clarity about the direction I want to focus my efforts, but I needed a way to do that would provide room for the various things I do. My work is an intersection of faith, art, and entrepreneurship. And in that work, I do several things and I serve several different audiences. In all of the information that I was finding about nailing your niche, it made me think of the letter V, where it's wide at the top and then it gets narrow and pointed at the bottom. It made me think that I had to make this terrible decision where I had to look at all I wanted to build and all the ways I wanted to show up and choose the one thing I was going to build and the one way I was going to show up. I felt like I had to make this hard choice between which one part of my work I would acknowledge and all the other parts that I would ignore. And that just wasn't going to work for me. I remember the day I decided to just find out from the dictionary what a niche even means. And in architecture, a niche is this carved out space in a wall. When I saw that, I had this light bulb moment for the way I wanted to help myself and my clients nail our niches. In my light bulb moment, the questions changed. They were no longer, what one thing are you going to do, or what one audience are you going to serve? Now, the questions became, first of all, what kind of space are you carving out with your work in your field or industry? What do you want your space to be about? What kind of work are you building in that space? What happens in your space? Who do you want to invite into and serve in your space? Now, the process of nailing my niche was no longer about deciding the one thing or audience. Instead, it became about understanding what I wanted to build in my space. You remember that V that I mentioned, where it feels like you have to take all that you want to build and only choose one part of it? Well, in my work, I have discovered that the spacious way of nailing your niche functions more like an X. And the X works like this. The top part, where it starts wide and gets narrow, is about getting clear about your work. So the narrowing is about clarity. For me, I am a multi-published author, choreographer, and educator who writes, speaks, coaches, podcasts, teaches, mentors, and creates in and across the areas of faith, art, and entrepreneurship. However, no matter what field I'm working in, and no matter what capacity I'm functioning in, all of my work serves a specific purpose. I help creators answer the question, what am I building? So they have the clarity they need to make the best decisions in building and sharing their work their way. I help you get clarity about what you're building. That is the purpose all of my work serves. Now, in the bottom part of that X, which is the expansive part, this is where you get to choose and decide who you want to do that work with. So the top part of the X is getting clear about what your work is. And the bottom part, once you're clear about that work, is where you get to choose and decide who you want to do that work with. Again, for me, I help creators get clear about what they're building. And I serve that purpose through various mediums with several audiences. With artists, I help them clarify the kind of art career they want to build. With artists of faith, I help them clarify the kind of relationship they want to cultivate between their art career and their faith. With authors, I help them clarify the specific book they're seeking to write. And with entrepreneurs, I help them clarify the kind of business they want to build. So my work serves a specific purpose. I use multiple mediums across various fields to serve that purpose, and I do that work with several different audiences. Now, when you think about nailing your niche like this, the objective is not about finding the one thing. Instead, it's about being able to clearly define what your work is and is about. It's about being able to easily and simply articulate the space you are carving out with your work. This reframing of my niche was transformative for my journey as an entrepreneur and for my work. This new way of thinking about the niche, it gave me room and flexibility. I'm a dancer, so I got to dance. So it gave me room and flexibility and space to evolve and like lots of different ways to do my work. And at the same time, it gave me focus and direction and order and organization. And that was one of the biggest things that I got out of this is it gave me a way to organize my work and the various aspects of that work. Because in this way of understanding my niche, it wasn't about getting down to the one thing. It was, what is my space about, right? What's my space about? And how do I organize the various elements that exist in my space? Transformative. So this organization element for me was really huge. At one point, I was all over the place. I had 4 different websites. When people would ask me what I do, I had that experience where you're like, well, okay, so, okay, well, if you well, I kind of, and then it feels like you can never get the words out of your mouth. I was all over the place. And one of the things when I'm working with clients that I talk about is you can do different things, but the way that you present it is important. So there's one way of talking about your work where you're like, it sounds like you're saying, I'm a lawyer, landscape architect, painter, rock star, limo driver, etc., which makes you appear very flaky, right? Because the first thing that I'm thinking about is how can you possibly do all of those things, let alone be good at them? Then there's a different way of presenting your work where it's like, for instance, I explore family dynamics through painting, writing, portraits, and such. One way makes you sound like you don't know what you're talking about. And the other way grounds and organizes your work and gives you flexibility in how you do that. So that was a huge thing that I learned in this process and that I share with my clients. So for me, interestingly enough, there is one thing that I do or one thing that I care about. And that is, as the video said, I help creators get clear about what they're building. And it was great for me to understand that and organize my work within that. So one of the things that I understood was no matter who I'm working with, I do the same thing, right? I show up in those spaces, working with those audiences in those fields. I show up in the same way, right? No matter who I'm working with, artist, author, entrepreneur, no matter who, I'm working with you towards the same end to help you get clear about your work, right? No matter what field I show up in, art, entrepreneurship, authorship, I'm showing up in the same way, right? I came to understand that though I do a lot of things, podcast, mentor, write books, make dances, teach, all of those things, they're activities that I do, but they're not my work. And I'll talk about that in a later video because that was another huge thing that I came to understand that was like, oh, okay, right? So all of those things, I do them, but they're not what I do, they're how I do what I do. They're different modes and methods and mediums that I use to do what I do, right? Which is helping people get clear about their work. And I do that work serving different audiences, and I do that work in different fields. Man, let me tell you, when I was able to finally see that like that, I mean, I overuse the word in this video, but transformative. Just absolutely transformative. Coming to understand my niche as this space for me to create my work in, that was a gift. It was a huge gift that gave me both order and gave me space. It gave me space to show up in the various ways that I show up as a creator, as a teacher, as a thinker, as a speaker, as a mentor, as all these different ways that I show up. It gave me space, or should I say, gives me, because it's still operating, but it gives me space to work in different fields. I don't want to just work in one field. I'm a creative. I need variety, right? So it gives me space to work in different fields. It gives me space to work with different audiences, right? Which is so cool. I can work with authors and artists and entrepreneurs of all kinds. It gives me that space to do that. And it gives me space to use different methods and mediums to do my work, whether I want to do that through writing books or speaking or making videos or a podcast or creating a course, or it just gives me this space to do my work. And so that was a huge gift. So I would love to hear how this new way of thinking about what a niche is, this architectural take on a niche. What do you think about that? How does that transform or expand or even converse with the way you've understood your niche and even how you think about your work? I'd love to know your thoughts and even questions that you have. And I hope to see you in our next video.